folks, so yesterday we kind of got dumped on here, snow wise, and we had some forewarning that it was coming and everything. I mean, this is still the middle of January 2019, so we got probably about 8-9 inches worth from my estimation looking out the window. So at any rate, we had plenty of warning that it was coming and everything. And so what I have been doing this weekend, I have just been kind of going through and using up some leftovers out of the refrigerator, out of the freezer, I should say. I had chili the other day, and tonight I'm going to have some leftover beef stew. And in case you missed that video, you can find it right up here in the right hand corner, and you can take a look at that. And so that's what I'm going to be eating tonight. But just because I'm eating up leftovers doesn't mean that I can't make something really flavorful and good to go with that beef stew tonight. And one thing that goes really great with a beef stew is my furnace. So one thing that goes really great with a beef stew is a nice hearty homemade loaf of bread. And so today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start from scratch, start to finish, with my Chuck's Farmhouse Loaf of bread. So let's get turned around and see what we're going to do here. Okay, so what we've got here, as maybe you saw, we've got a package of active dry yeast here. Now, yeast is a living organism that has been dried and packaged for use. And when it is dried, it kind of goes into a almost like a suspended animation. It goes inactive, actually. And so what we're getting ready to do here, we're going to reactivate this yeast. I've got 1 tablespoon of sugar and a 1.5 cups of warm water. And now we don't want hot water, hot enough to burn you or anything like that. But it does need to be warm. We're going to go ahead and put our sugar right into our warm water. The warm water is going to help the sugar dissolve. I just recently washed this little ramekin thing, and apparently it stuck some of that sugar at the bottom. But at any rate, here we go. We're going to dissolve this sugar into the warm water, and you notice as it dissolves how it the water becomes clear again. That's how you know when you've got it all dissolved. Now, our yeast, I don't know if you noticed this when I was playing around there, but this yeast is a little on the old side. So before I used it, I did a test. In fact, this was says best if used by September 2018. Well, it says January of 2019. So I did a test to make sure that the yeast was still viable. And you'll see here shortly, we're going to give it a stir, but you'll see here shortly that it is in fact still viable. Lots of baking products like baking powder you can test to ensure things are still working. So we're just stir it up here, and it's alright that there's a couple lumps in here. It's not going to hurt a thing. But when we go to kneading our bread, it'll all get mixed out. We're going to let it sit, and while we go ahead and do our other things here. So let's, I'm going to move this out of the way, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. Okay, so our ingredients list. I've got 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour here, or I should say it is whole wheat all-purpose flour. I've got 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I've got 2 tablespoons here of wheat gluten. Now, I know a lot of people these days seem to have problems with wheat gluten. I have 0 problems with wheat gluten. I don't know. I would, you know, it's your own judgment. Now then, if you don't use wheat gluten, and I have made this without wheat gluten, what you're going to end up with is a pretty dense loaf because of the use of the whole wheat flour. Because whole wheat flour does not develop a very good wheat gluten. Also, because we are using all-purpose flour instead of bread flour. Bread flour has a high gluten content, and so that's the purpose of bread flour, because the gluten makes your bread stretchy and allows the good pockets of CO2 to form inside the bread that gives you your bubbles inside the bread. Now then, I've got 2 teaspoons of just regular table salt here. I've got a tablespoon and a half of vegetable oil. If you want to use olive oil, be my guest. Now then, we're going to come back to our yeast starter here. Hopefully you can see that this yeast starter is growing. It's got like a dome on top of it here, and that is the yeast and the CO2 that's being formed. Yeast love to eat sugar, and so that's the purpose of putting the sugar in, is so that you get those bubbles into your bread. You could use honey. The yeast will eat that as well, and they love moisture. And so they have their moisture, they have their food, and as they are metabolizing the sugar, they are putting off 2 products. One is CO2 and the other is alcohol. And that is how yeast end up making things like beer, and after it's been distilled and whatnot, then you can make other things like hard liquors. Yeast also make wines and all that good stuff as well. Now, in my past experience has been that we may end up needing to add a little bit more water into this dough as we go along. And the reason being is because whole wheat flour seems to be a kind of a sponge when it comes to adding liquid to it. And so it tends to, in my experience, tends to want to dry out the dough kind of easy. Now, I'm going to do this by hand. I really did debate whether I wanted to use my stand mixer or not. However, I pride my channel in being designed for the beginner in a lot of my recipes. And this is certainly one of those recipes that a beginner can make with no big problem. Not a lot of equipment needed. And so I've decided to keep it simple and do it all by hand here. Now, I'd like to dedicate this video to my son Chase, who believes he wants to be a baker and pastry chef, and so this is going to fall right in line with his what he wants to do in life. He's currently 17 and a junior in high school. So Chase, this one's for you. Okay, I'm going to dump it out here on my pastry mat. Now we knead and add warm water as needed for 1/2 hour. So time me. Now there is kind of an art to kneading. You see, I'm using the heel of my hand, pushing down and spreading and folding it. Push it out, fold back, go crossways with it. Use each hand, or give it a spin. like that if you need to. If you can only use one hand. You see we're doing pretty good here with getting all our flour picked up into the dough here. We should be able to very shortly even keep our hands clean. In the kneading process, make sure that all the ingredients are well mixed throughout. It also helps develop the gluten in the bread dough. And if you're going to do this with your mixer, and you certainly can with a dough hook on it, and you could do this for about 7 or 8 minutes and do the same work. And now you know why I was debating using my mixer. Okay, so our half hour has come and gone now. We want to kind of form our dough into a nice ball here. Kind of like that. I'm going to get my bowl cleaned out real quick when I made our initial dough in. I'm going to take and put just maybe a half a tablespoon in here. Like that. We're going to take our fingers, just kind of spread it around a little bit, coat the inside of the bowl. Okay, now we're going to put our bread dough in here, and we want to roll that around, and we want to kind of coat the outside of our dough with the oil. Trying to close up the seam kind of on the bottom here, so we don't have a big end up with a big issue there. Now, and what I've got here is what we call a flour sack cloth. And basically, this sack has flour in it, as you might be able to see. And we're going to cover our dough with this flour sack cloth, right like that. We want to let this dough double. And so it's going to take about 2 hours. We're going to let it sit here in a nice warm environment, so to speak. And we will check back in a couple hours. Okay, so it's time for the big reveal. And there is our dough, all ready to go. So, put and don't know it. There you go. So we're going to pull this out of here. And we have to knead it for 10 minutes. If we need to put a little more water in it, we can. Got a little flour here from that flour sack cloth. I think I will. We'll add just a little bit more water here. Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes now. And I'm really happy with the way this is turning out. And the reason being, by putting that water in there, this dough is able to be brought back together, and it sticks to itself. I don't have big creases between. So there's going to be my basic loaf. I've got this baking pan here. I'm going to sit it right there in the middle, and we have to let this rise again for another half hour. So I'm going to grab my towel again, and we're going to cover it back up, and we're going to let that sit for a half an hour. We'll be back in a half an hour. Oh, in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start preheating the oven. We're going to take it to 450 degrees. Okay, time for the second big reveal. There we go. Now then, what we are going to do, we are going to take our knife here, and we are going to cut just a few slices into our dough. It's going to help it to be able to expand as it's baking. Now then, we are going to take, and we've got ice water here. I'm going to paint that right over the top. This, we're going to use that ice water again here in just a moment. And we're going to take a little bit of a handful of some, yes we are. It is rolled oats, oatmeal, whatever you want to call it. Just kind of stick them on there a little bit. The water will help to do that, because it helps if you don't drop them from so high where they can bounce. There we go. Just some decoration. Now into our 450 degree oven. Now the last time I did this, the recipe says, and I will post a link to the recipe down below. The recipe says to bake this for 30 minutes. However, I found that the last time I did it out of a loaf pan, I've done it both in and out of a loaf pan, it takes about 25 minutes when it's not in a loaf pan. So there's that. Now, and I've got my cast iron skillet here. And I am going to take this and pour that right in there like that. That steam coming off of that is going to help us to get a crusty bread. Now we turn this down to 350 degrees and we're going to check back in 25 minutes. Okay, so our 25-minute timer has come and gone. Let's see what we got going on here. Oh, that looks pretty good. Stick a knife into it. See how we are down inside. I think I'm going to give that about 3 more minutes. I felt a little tug on the knife. Okay, so 3 minutes has come and gone. I think we're going to pull this out of here. Alright, there she is. And doesn't she look wonderful? Okay, so I'll move this over here. Maybe I am. Just stuck a little bit. Here we go. Maybe a little parchment paper was in order. It's hot. Imagine that. This came out of the oven. So here we go. I hope you can hear that crust. How beautiful is it? Time for a little butter. Alright folks, I think this is going to go beautifully with my beef stew. If you may remember the beef stroganoff I made, this would go excellently with that as well. It's time to get turned around, folks. Alright folks, well, you see that I did this. Now we could have shortened the time on this a lot if I had used my mixer with the dough hook on it. That's alright. I wanted to show you how to do it with the old-fashioned way. And anybody can do this. It's really a minimum of cost and trouble. And so folks, it's time. I've been smelling this all day between the yeast and the dough and everything. I love the smell of bread as it's being made. It's time. And the payoff is so worth it. Wow. Folks, this is wonderful. Chase, I hope you enjoy this video. Your birthday's in a couple weeks. And always thinking about you. Folks, do me a favor, down here in the bottom right hand corner, if you like what you're seeing, hit like and subscribe, and stay tuned. there's always more to come. And thanks for watching.